Hello everyone, and thank you for attending this Petrosys webinar on advanced gridding techniques, specifically on localized regridding. My name is Alec Kalingas. I'm one of the technical support people out of the Houston office here, and I'm going to be the one running us through today's presentation. For technical reasons, all of you attendees are currently muted, but please feel free to key in any questions you have during or after the presentation. We'll try to get them answered for you. Okay. Well, before we get into the actual presentation, I'd like to just discuss what we mean by localized regridding. Exactly what is Petrosys localized regridding? Well, what we mean by this is it's a technique where a user can alter a small portion of a large regional grid. Okay, so for instance, we look at this pretty simple data set here. This is actually what we're going to be using for today's show. It's a pretty simple data set. There's a well over here on the western flank, but a new well has come in over on the east, and the Z value of the well just doesn't match the grid. So we've got to be able to zoom into the grid here, and we want to be able to draw a fencing polygon around this area. So we limit our operations to this local area of interest, but we want to be able to manipulate the grid to match the new well. So for instance, we can see these contours are the original contours in the new well, and it's just not matching up. We want to be able to massage this grid just inside the polygon here so that we can get the contours to match the new data set, but don't mess up the rest of the grid. Okay, so that's what we mean by localized regridding. It's the idea of being able to put a fence polygon around an area, let a user manipulate data inside that area, and then apply those edits to the entire grid, but just apply it over that one little patch. Okay, okay. So let me kind of get into the show here. All right. What we've got here is this is just the original data set. All right? It was a really poor data set. All we had was just a paper hand-drawn map. All right. So originally, to work with this, we just digitized the contours, and we loaded up the one well into a Petrosys data file, and we gridded all that data, which gave us this surface. Okay, and that's all fine and dandy. That's wonderful. But now, at a later point in time, a new well has come into the fray, okay, over here on the western side, or I'm sorry, on the eastern side of the map, Moonfish number 2, all right, and this wasn't part of the original interpretation. So I want to be able to zoom down into this area right in here and fix up this area of the grid and get these contours to match our new well, all right. So I'm going to clean up the display a little bit here, turn off a few things, just get rid of some of these labels, and I'll just kind of zoom down into our area of interest. Okay. Now the first thing that you're going to want to have is a polygon. You're going to want to limit the regridding operation to a local fenced-in area, so we have to create that local fenced-in area. Now there's lots of ways to create polygons inside of Petrosys, but the easiest way to create a polygon is just to go up to here, go to Edit, Create Single Polygon. Okay. So when you do this, you're allowed to specify a polygon file. I'm just going to make a new file. I'm just going to call it regrid areas, and you can key in the name of your polygon. I'm just going to call it my area Moonfish 2 area number 1. All right. I'm just going to overwrite a file that I already had existing. So now I'm just going to draw in my polygon. Well, I want to make edits to this thing, and so I don't know. I'm just going to put a polygon around here. We'll limit our edits to this area. Okay. I can turn down that little area right there. Okay. So that's our polygon that we're going to use for our localized regridding operation. All right. Now we have to come up with some data inside of this, and so for that I'm just going to use this contour file. If I just click on that contour, by right-clicking and going to Edit, I can very quickly just push this contour file into our spatial data editor. I'm going to use the spatial data editor to manipulate these contours to make my new data set. Okay, but any data that you can come up with, you can use in the gridding operation. All right. Now this isn't a webinar about how to use the spatial data editor, but for any of you folks that don't know about the new system, just very quickly, there's a lot of things that you can do now that we couldn't do before. For instance, I can multi-select contours and edit them all together. There's tools down below where I can use to interactively bend shapes, move shapes, and smooth them. By using this bending tool, if I hold the shift key down and move the mouse wheel, I can control the amount of area of influence that's going to be used when I'm doing these edits. Okay, so for instance, if I have this big area, I can click, drag, and I can edit all of these things in one go. All right, that's one way that I could edit contours. Okay, but I'm just going to abandon that. I'm going to undo those edits, and I'm going to edit these contours a slightly different way. And that's just by using this tool here, interactively add and edit shapes. Okay, and I can replace part of an existing object. So I'm just going to very quickly redraw in a bit of interpretation. So I'm going to pull the 1490 over to here and pull this contour back over to here. Now I'm not a geologist, so I'm not making any claims to fames on my edits and interpretation, but I'm just trying to demonstrate a technique here. Okay, that's the 1520 contour, and now I'm going to wrap the 1530 on that side of the well and the 1540 on that side of the well, and I'll redo the 1500 as well. Okay. So there's my edited contours. These are the edits that I want to have applied to this grid inside of this area of interest here. All right. So I'm going to save this contour file as a new data set. I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'm going to create a brand new file out of it. I'll just call it the same original file name with hand edited appended to the end of it. Okay. So I'm going to make a new file that didn't exist before. Right. Now, to use that data, we're going to go back into the gridding and contouring module. Okay, and this is the gridding workflow that was used to make this original surface. This step right here was used to grid the original hand digitized contour map that I showed you in the beginning of the show. But now we've got new data. We've got new contours inside this little polygon right here. All right, so we want to apply what's called a localized regridding step over that area. So if we look at this step, right, it's pretty much the same as grid create grid. Localized regridding is very, very, very similar. There's just a few different things. The first thing to note on localized regridding is you have to go to the methods tab, okay, and set the operation to localized regridding. No longer are you going to use standard gridding, you're going to use localized regridding. All right. Now when you do that, the interface is going to slightly change a little bit. The gridding algorithm, that's always the same. You can use any of our different gridding algorithms inside the little patch. That's no big deal. And the interpolation method is the same as well. However, when you're doing a localized regrid operation, you have to tell the software what is the original grid that you're trying to regrid. Right? In this case, it's this moonfish top latrobe grid. That's my original surface that I'm trying to massage. You also have to tell the software where to apply those edits, and you do that by specifying the polygon that we created over here. Right? So we created this polygon to control the localized regridding operation, and we're just specifying that polygon here in the interface. Okay? So the first key when you want to do a localized regridding, again, is to set this to localized regridding for your operation, and then fill in the original grid file and the polygon options down below. All right? That's the first key difference. The second key difference between a normal gridding operation is the input data that you're going to use. No longer are you going to be using the input data that was originally used. This particular data set, it was only one well only anyway. There really wasn't any data. We want to be able to tell the system to use the edited data set. So in this step, I'm going to be using my hand edited contour file from my edits that I made in the previous section. Okay? So that's my input data, the hand edited contour file. Other than that, everything is pretty much just the same as any other gridding operation that you might be used to. All right? We suggest if you're doing a localized regrid that you do rename the grid, put something on the end so that you know that this is the localized regridding step, and so you can just rerun this step over and over and over again until you're happy. All right? But other than that, it's all just normal stuff. So we'll let this step run. All those will run. Hit finish up. Now if we go back to the map, okay, and if I turn on this set of layers right here, that's what this is. All right. If I close out of the editor here, all right, so we can see this is our new updated contour file. All right. Now sometimes, in this particular case, we got a little bit of some edge effects. Notice what has happened here along where the polygon is intersecting my contours that I've been editing. We've got some edge effects happening here. You see these little contour lines that are popping up here? I really don't like those. Right? I'd like to try to get rid of those things. And a point here that I'm trying to make, when you're in a localized regridding operation, when you're editing data, it's best if you can leave some extra space. So for instance, I was editing data that was very, very close to this edge of this polygon. And as a result of that, I've caused some edge effects. So it is always better when you're doing this operation to make sure that the polygon, the fence polygon, has a little bit of extra area around it. It's a little bit bigger than what you might normally think it needs to be. Now I can fix this very quickly just by simply clicking on the polygon, right-clicking, and going to edit. Okay. So we'll move that polygon in the editor. I'll use that same tool about replacing parts of an existing object, and I'll just redigitize this polygon to encompass a little bit more area. I'll save this and quit out. And now, if we rerun our localized regridding step, and now look at our map. Okay, those little dots and edge effects are gone. All right. So you really want to have a little bit of extra space. You don't want to be editing data right at your polygon edge. Sometimes you can cause little edge effects. Okay. But in essence, that's really it. To do a localized regridding, okay, just to review, you have to have an original grid, of course. Right. The second thing you have to have is a polygon to limit the operation to this area. All right? And you can create those polygons just by going to Edit, Create Single Polygon. That's the easiest thing. And the third thing you need is some extra data inside the polygon. All right? And in this particular case, I've simply used a contour file to generate that data. Well, that's all I have to show. Thank you very much for attending the presentation. If you have any questions, please key them in and we'll try to get them answered. Thank you very much.